Name's Joshua Howard. I was born in Louisville, Kentucky. I had both my parents all my life. I don't remember much of Louisville. We ended up moving out of there. The part of town we lived in was pretty ran down from what I've been told. The one thing I do remember is being removed from our home at an early age and going to my grandmother's house, I believe. Removed as a sense, so we lived in a bad part of town. Me and my brother were sitting at the kitchen table eating White Castle, and 2 bullets came through the wall right in between us. So we packed up and left, and I'm not sure how long after, it might have been a year or so, we moved to Lexington, and didn't have a lot of money that I can remember, and then my dad started. He had a good friend that had a franchise, and he started his franchise down here in Lexington, and then we moved to South Point. Didn't really have a bad childhood or anything. I just remember Dad wasn't really around a lot. He wasn't a bad father or anything. He just started that business.
He just worked hard.
Yeah, just was always at work. So that left my mother with 2 boys, and she could not stop us from doing anything. And my brother's 5 years older than me, so anytime he snuck out of the house to do anything, I waited 5 minutes and snuck out behind him, and just ended up in most of the stuff that he was doing. So I liked school growing up initially, elementary school, all that, and then I started sneaking out with my brother, smoking weed at 9 years old, and that progressed pretty quickly. I think I remember I was probably 10 years old at this time, going out and ended up somewhere with his friends. And they gave me something that was on paper that I didn't know what it was. Ended up being LSD. So 10 years old, running around like a crazy man on LSD. I loved it, so continued to do it up until I came here. But there's a lot in between that. So my parents got a divorce when I was 15. They wanted to fight back and forth with who was going to keep me and my brother. My brother was already at a certain age where he got to make his own decision. I initially went and lived with my mother, and
They split you guys up?
they didn't necessarily split us up, but my brother came back and forth between the homes. Well, I guess I maybe went a little farther. So we moved to Harrodsburg when I was 13 before they got a divorce, and things were already kind of rough between them, and we knew that, but we both always knew that both of our parents loved us. We didn't really have a mixed emotions about that. We knew that they were both always going to be there for us, whatever. And so we started a new school, moving from 2 big cities, Lexington and Louisville, to a very small country town. People already knew who we were when we moved there, and they weren't happy about it for whatever reason. I never really figured out why that was. Something to do with my dad, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure I found out later that he didn't make a lot of friends related to the business. I don't know if that was just due to political stuff inside of work or whatever, but so we started school in a little town. I always made friends pretty easily. I didn't really pick and choose who they were or what kind of people they hung out with. I was always probably selling weed. I got in a lot of trouble for that, so everybody talked to me. I talked to everybody. I was kind of that person that went from this group to that group to that group, and just never really had a problem making friends, but
You think
yeah.
that's because of weed?
Yeah, I would say it was probably mostly because of that. And I got along with people. I was never really in a bad mood or any of that. I've never really had, I don't know, I never took stuff very seriously. So and the weed, of course. But so there was a point where me and my brother were going to school and not riding the school bus. I was already doing cocaine at age 12. Not really sure where that started. It just came into the picture somewhere. It had a short life at that point in my life. I only did it a few times and got kicked out of school for being overly excited about things, I guess. I don't know. I couldn't sit still. I mean, that's basically what I mean. I couldn't pay attention in class. I was always getting up leaving school. My brother would pick me up and we'd go do whatever we were doing, smoking weed, doing that. Like I said, with the LSD, I was always looking for a route with that. So me and my brother, I was 15, I was 16, dropped out of school. I got caught selling weed on school property. The police showed up. They found a large amount of weed in a vehicle me and my brother had. She was already driving at that point. And we went through this court thing with what's the guy that's over the school superintendent, and he didn't like my brother, so he didn't like me. We always just had an attitude towards that school. Neither one of us liked moving to the little town from a big town. Had to leave all of our friends behind and all that stuff, everybody we grew up with. And it just turned into this big circus between us and school faculty and all that. So it got to the point where I got caught with the weed and went to court, and it came down to either pay this huge fee, this huge fine for court. I think it was like $80,000 or something, or drop out. So it was basically them kicking me out, but making it my choice. So I did that, and then I went to work with my father after that and started learning the construction business and all that. So I just basically went straight to work from being dropped out from school. I was probably with my father in his business for 5 years. My brother didn't really have that much trouble with drugs and alcohol until a little later in both of our lives. I would say that I took it a little farther than he did.
Okay.
I ran around in the circles a little more than he did. Found my own friends that were doing stuff on the same grounds, and it just turned into a whole, that was my lifestyle now, so that's what I'm gonna do, but also went to work every day. Probably about 5 years into working for my dad, it was a constant, so it's an 24-hour emergency business, so it was just like never getting a break from work or having a life outside of it, so I just started doing the cocaine more. I had it with me almost every day because I wasn't sleeping, because I was doing it after work and all that. And I started going to jail. The first time I went to jail, I was 18, had a DUI, and parents bonded me out. I don't know, it was probably a few months after that I was back in jail. It was something with the driving offense. It was always something that had to do with a car. I stole my first car when I was 14 and got put on probation for that. I couldn't tell you how many cars I stole without getting caught, and it never was like a stealing for money thing. It was just because we could and had fun doing it. Had two friends that I mainly did it with, and we just basically stole nice cars and drove them until they were dead and threw them over a bridge in the Kentucky River. Only ever got caught stealing one of them, so I hope statute of limitations don't get me. But I don't know. Since my dad had that business and I worked for him, having money wasn't really ever a problem, and where he dedicated most of his time to work and didn't really wasn't a father to me most of my life. It was just kind of an employee boss kind of situation. So it was always a scolding for something, or do better at this, do better at that, you got to be a man and all that. You dropped out of school and this and that. I don't know, I have a hard time with some of this because part of my drug addiction was Xanaxes, and I got into those very heavily, so a lot of situations in my life were a pretty good blur.
When did Xanax come into the story? And you know who introduced you?
A doctor. Go back just a little bit. When I was 14, I was pretty heavy into skateboarding when I was a kid. Broke some bones doing it, and when I was 14, we were going down a road on Tage Creek Boulevard in Lexington, and I had this bright idea to come down this giant hill and try to make it across traffic without getting hit. Well, it was not successful. I broke a lot of bones when I did that, and ended up in the hospital in a half a body cast on my left side and right side, and got put on pain pills, and where they prescribed me so many of them, they also put it on Xanax for the anxiety, I guess they cause. And at that point, didn't really know about pain pill addiction or any of that stuff, so I was on the pain medication for 3 or 4 years, and they cut me off of it. And I was already going to a pain clinic with a bunch of people, so I knew how to get them outside of the pain, or outside of the hospital. So it just spiraled from there. I was spending all my money on pain pills and cocaine and Xanaxes, and going to work, and really was spending more time doing drugs than I was actually working. But at that time, I was more showing people what to do and delegating stuff, so I could do that and then go back to what I wanted to do. And that went on. I was probably 16 by then. I was driving, so I had to be 16. And then at 17, after my parents had a divorce, I don't know where the money had come from, but I guess my dad had something set up in mine and my brother's name, and we both bought a house together at 17. I was 17, he was 21, and it went great for a little while. We both paid the bills and all that, and I'd say probably about a year and a half into that's when my brother started back on the cocaine with me, and it went pretty downhill pretty fast after that. He had a suicide attempt. I found him on a curb in front of a Subway in Nicholasville, surrounded by cops with a .38 special in his hand. Ended up talking him out of that and getting him some help, and really, ever since then, he never really had an addiction problem. He still was a drinker, but not really to the point where it was ruining his life or anything. And by that time, I had already been to rehab once. I've been to jail numerous times. I think I already had, by 19, I think I'd already had 3 DUIs, either marijuana related or cocaine related. My mother had a brother that was in and out of prison for alcoholism and other drugs, and he paroled out and came and lived with us when I was a child, when I was still living with my mom. And he was a pretty violent guy, so I never was attracted to alcohol for that reason. I didn't ever want to be that guy that was just wanted to beat people up all the time, and that's pretty much how he was. So I never really got into drinking. I did I got drunk for my first time on my 21st birthday, actually. Didn't really care for it. It was a terrible feeling the next day, so just continued down the path with everything chemical related. So I got into a little bit of the rave scene with some friends and just doing the psychedelics mostly every weekend or whenever we could find it. After about a year or so, it wasn't very hard to find. I ended up making some friends that circled around with like the Grateful Dead and the Rainbow Family and all that stuff, and went on some like out-of-state trips with them and made connections for that. Ended up actually meeting the pharmacist or the chemist that work at UK, and he was making LSD, and ended up just being consumed by that for probably 5 or 6 years until I think he got caught by the feds for whatever he was doing at UK. And so I just went back to normal, weekend stuff, and always smoking weed, just getting in trouble. I was always getting pulled over for something, either racing a car or just giving everybody hell.
And you're still working for your dad doing all this?
Yeah.
What kind of employee were you?
I mean, I've always had a good work ethic. I mean, there's one thing he gave me in my younger years. I mean, when we moved out to the country, we cleared 18 acres of land of trees. So my grandpa was around, my mom's dad was always around. So I never had a problem working. Didn't really have a whole lot handed to me. If I wanted something, I had to work for it. Just always wanted to get my part done so that everybody else could do what they needed to do, so I could go back to doing the drugs. And I would say a lot of people that worked with me or under me knew that. Some of them were my father's friends. I probably didn't want to get me in trouble, so nobody ever said anything. I never liked going to a house and somebody finding out that I was the owner's son. So that means, I got to be more present or they want more from me. So I never liked that being brought out. I don't know. I mean, I would say that I probably have more schooling in like that basis of work for construction, carpentry, and HVAC work, or working in attics, crawl spaces, than a lot of people would think. I mean, I've spent months in schools and classes just learning trade work. Never really got licensed for any of it. I did go to school to be an electrician, but I did not end up staying on that course. I didn't like the idea of messing up one time and being dead. But I always kept it at a certain baseline for a long time. I never really had a death wish or anything. I just really liked living that lifestyle and getting high. And most of my friends, were in that circle too.
Same way.
Yeah.
What was relationship like? Are you married?
Not legally. I consider myself to be at the moment. So the girl that I'm with now, I actually met her when I was 18 years old at UK while selling cocaine and LSD to everybody. I actually lived on campus for probably a little over 4 years and never went to a college course, not one day in my life. Lived on Greg Page for a while, but I also had my house in Nicholasville. But me and my brother both lived there, so I spent more time elsewhere than I really did at the house. So me and her met each other, had a good relationship for probably 4.5, 5 years, and end up losing my house, and a lot of things go downhill. She had to move back home to Marion County. I wouldn't say that we split up, but I ended up meeting another girl had a short relationship with her, but had my first daughter was born from her. Probably was with her for about a year maybe, and we ended up splitting up, and me and the first girl hadn't really talked for probably a year and a half or so, but once me and my first daughter's mom split up, we kind of got back together and got an apartment back in Lexington. We never really talked about getting married. Our relationship was based off drugs, really. She liked to drink. I didn't really like to drink, so she started doing more of the stuff that I was doing. I'd say I was probably kind of the bad boy in her view. So always took care of anything that needed to be taken care of. Still never really had a money issue. It was just a hanging around with the wrong crowd issue. Still getting arrested all the time, either out doing something crazy or just being around the wrong crowd.
What was the moment that I gotta do something different?
When I was 21, 22 years old, I would say I got my first serious charge. I'd gotten a DUI with fleeing and evading on top of it, so I actually had to do some jail time. And by this point, I had called my parents from jail so many times that they were just like, we're not gonna bail you out anymore. It's just not doing any good to get you out of jail. So I started sitting in jail when I got arrested. And then in between after that and where I am now, I was probably 23. Pain pills were getting hard to find in Kentucky, and the pill mill stuff started in Florida. So me and the 3 or 4 friends that I hung out with on a regular basis started driving to Florida and doing the pill mill thing, and was probably going down there and getting, I don't know, upwards of like 10,000 pain pills a trip, and also the barbiturates, the Xanaxes, and just stayed doing that until they shut the Florida thing down. It was, I don't know, that was basically the highlight of my life, doing that. And I was still working for my dad. I think at this point I had asked him for help one time, and he shut me down, just said, if you want to stop, just stop, because it was, early 2000s, addiction really wasn't, a widespread thing, and all that. Really, he didn't understand it like I did. He had never had any trouble with it growing up or any of that. So, when he told me to just man up and quit doing it, I was like, all right. And I didn't, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I started stealing money from him, and it got steep real quick. And then he found out after I think I had gotten into him for about $50,000. And then he started looking into, why am I acting the way I'm acting while still working for him. I don't know, it's probably maybe about a year after that, I ended up getting my burglary charge. I think I was almost 24 when that happened, and went to court for I think almost 2 years over that, and bonded out. So I was out on the streets when I was going to court for it, and fought it because they charged me with a burglary first. It was the house that I was living in. It was just a weird circumstance. The way that it went down, it was crazy. So I had like my driver's license said that I lived there. I could prove that I lived there. So that's why we were fighting it the way that we were. My dad, I don't know, it was weird how it happened. So he ended up being on the side of the cops. He was actually out of the country when I got arrested for it. So when he got back, he went to the sheriff's office and signed an affidavit saying that it was where I lived and all that. And then they ended up releasing me and dropping the charges. And I think it was within 6 weeks I had gotten a letter from the Commonwealth of Kentucky that they had enough evidence to pursue the charges and were going to. And so it ended up back in court, and at the end of the day, the judge was tired of seeing the case, and he told me that I was leaving with a felony whether I liked it or not. So I ended up with a third-degree burglary charge. I got put on Kentucky's first diversion that they ever did in Nicholasville. So I got a 5-year sentence with 5 years on the shelf. I violated it in, I think, 24 days, and they gave me another chance and added, what, 5 years onto it, I think. And I walked that down to 45 days left on the diversion and got it violated for a DUI. Went to jail. The DUI was in Campbellsville, Kentucky. I had just completed a 12-month program down there at the Healing Place and was working for them, and went out and got drunk in my car, got pulled over at McDonald's, leaving the drive-thru, and they were unable to get a hold of my PO, so they released me the next morning. And I went down to the lake in Campbellsville, Green River Lake, and ended up meeting a lady that owned the RV park down there, and she gave me a job in an apartment at the RV place, and I stayed down there for 3 years. I did not leave, but I had everything that I needed there. There was plenty of drugs and alcohol down there. I had a job and a place to live, so I stayed down there and stayed on the run for 3 years. And then I had a friend die, first heroin overdose from somebody that I knew, and I came back to Lexington for the funeral and was picked up almost immediately, and went to jail. Went back to court, got final sentenced. It violated me on my burglary charge, and just was like, man, it was just all of a sudden. So it just hadn't dawned on me yet how much freedom that I had just lost. Mm-hmm. So once I had talked to my dad and my mother about it, it's just like they'll help me any way that they feel they can, that they don't want to be a what do you call it, enabler. Uh-huh. So at this point, they had done a little research on addiction and all that, and why I've ended up where I've ended up. I came back to the county jail. I was in Jessamine County, and I went to the state side that they had, where you can go out to work in the community at the recycling center or pick up trash on the side of the road. So I picked up trash on the side of the road for a while, and you'd be amazed at how many full bottles of beer you'd find on the side of the road. So it was almost a getting drunk every day thing. And the guy that ran the Class D facility was an alcoholic himself. So as long as we didn't bother him, he didn't bother us. I was surprised myself at how much drug use there was in the jail. So I didn't really have to give up my addiction at that point. So I was there for 2.5 years, and I got asked if I wanted to go to SAP, because I was told I could get parole upon completion. So I think this was almost 3 years into my sentence. So I accepted SAP, and I think it took them another 6 months to actually come and get me. SAP is a substance abuse program inside of a jail. It's just like basically a lockdown rehab facility on the street, except for in jail. I actually went to the one in Marion County. No, I'm sorry, I didn't. I went to the one in Boyle County. Okay. So when they came and picked me up, I was still using at that time, but I knew I had accepted SAP, so I knew that if they showed up, I would have to pass a drug test. So when they showed up, I went to my dorm to change clothes and got some bleach and poured it in a cup and then peed in it, and I passed the drug test. So when they took me to Boyle County, they had to put me into the population in the stateside overnight. So I didn't know that the next morning I would have to take another drug test. So when they did that, I failed that one, and they took me back to Jessamine County. And it was, I think, almost another year and a half before I was offered SAP again, and I went to Marion County, and that's where I completed it at there. And I did not end up getting SAP or released upon completion. So I served my entire sentence from beginning to end with taking every available program. I think I took Inside Outside Dads, SAP program, MRT. I think it's called, one of them's Matrix, I think. I think there was one other one. So whatever I didn't run down taking programs, I did the rest of it. So I ended up doing a little over 6 years solid, and then I had reconnected with my family, built a pretty good relationship back up with them. My oldest daughter, her mom allowed her to come and see me probably through about half of that, and then decided it wasn't a good environment for her to be in. She was 7 years old at that point. So I kind of lost my relationship with her a little bit. But by that time, I had already had a son and another daughter. Didn't get into that, but I had a short relationship with another girl and had a son with her. And then me and her got back together, and we had a daughter. So right now, this day, that my oldest daughter's 18, my oldest son's 16 and a half, and my youngest daughter's 12. And my youngest daughter, I've always been able to have a relationship with. My two older ones, where I went to prison, we kind of fell out, and drug addiction, their moms didn't really want them in my life that much. And I accepted it for the most part, but always tried to be available if the relationship was ever to be there. So when I finished my last Inside Outside Dad program in jail, when they calculated my time, I was like 2 months past being released. So they released me like 2 days after that. I had to get a parole address done, so I couldn't find one in time. So they took me to the Burns Brady Center in Louisville, and it was a little crazy. I mean, there was an ambulance there every 15 minutes picking up somebody that had OD'd. I ended up staying sober while I was there, but I went to another program. I can't remember what it was called, actually. I didn't stay very long. I was out on MRS, so as soon as they released me from parole, I basically went back home to Harrodsburg. And it didn't take me long, probably 6 months to readjust to not having to be behind a locked door all the time or somebody over my shoulder watching me, and I was back running with people that I was before I got arrested. I started trying to find pain pills again. I was having a hard time doing that, so I went to the heroin and started snorting it at first. I wasn't really doing what I wanted it to do, so I started using the needle then. And that went pretty bad pretty quick. I think the first time I ever tried using a needle, I didn't realize that it had happened, but the guy that introduced the needle to me had Hep C, and so I'm assuming that I got it the first time I ever shot up, because I don't think I ever shared a needle again with somebody, to my knowledge. But I didn't actually find out that I had it for probably 12 years, I think it was. So I didn't find out I had it until I ended up in the hospital with like neon yellow skin and jaundice everywhere. But that was because I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I had started doing meth as well, and on top of Suboxone also. I never really used Suboxone the way it was supposed to be used when I was introduced to it. It was just another form of an opiate, so it was, you didn't have to take a lot of it to get the same effect off of it. And there was, I guess it was Subutex because it didn't have the opiate blocker in it because I was using it with heroin. And just spiraled out from there, started living in my car so I didn't have to deal with going home and all that. I wasn't in a relationship at this time. I never really was too worried about being in a relationship. As long as I could run and do whatever I wanted, I was pretty content.
Yeah.
So just continued doing that.
How long did you live in your car?
I'd say probably off and on for a year or so. I usually had somewhere I could lay my head in the winter or whatever. Because again, I always figured out some way to make money. I was good at working on houses, painting, all that stuff, anything really with my hands. So I could always find odd jobs doing whatever. So I was 29, no, I was 31 when I got out of prison. I had the burglary felony, and hard to find a job. Harrodsburg was already a small town. They weren't very favorable to people that were known drug addicts, and it's a small town, so everybody knew each other. So I really didn't have any luck finding like a real job per se, but I made enough with odd ins and out jobs. Ended up going to jail again for a DUI. I think I had to do like 14 days or something, and I pretty much detoxed all the way out to where it wasn't an immediate thing I had to do when I got out. And I ended up going to live with my dad, and he started taking me to he made me go to AA meetings if I wanted to stay there. So I went to the AA meeting, he went to the Al-Anon meeting. So I learned real quick that he wasn't taking the sob story anymore, that I'm sick or whatever, I owe people money or any of that. He found out that was all a ruse back then, just to get money if I needed it or whatever. And just really from that point, I think I stayed clean for about 6 months, and started doing heroin again. And once he found out, he gave me an opportunity, like a short window, to either stop doing it or get out of his house. So I ended up getting out of his house and couch surfing again. Stayed in that for, I don't know, probably another 2 years. Then I had my second friend die from a heroin overdose, and I went and got put on Suboxone because I'd never had a death wish. So I think that's when fentanyl started coming around. So that happened pretty quickly. I never had a death wish, and I started doing Xanaxes again. And it was probably about a year into that. I was doing, I don't know, I was spending like $1,200 a day on Xanaxes. I think I was doing anywhere from like 600 to 800 milligrams a day. So after I wrecked a car and pissed off a lot of people for things that I can't remember to this day, I ended up going to a rehab in Jamestown, Kentucky, down close to Tennessee. It was a religious rehab. I just happened to be somewhere, first place I could find a bed at. And I stayed there for a year. And, for the first 3 months, I was constantly having seizures. Since they were a religious rehab, their answer to everything was to pray over you and not call a hospital. Yeah, so once I got through that, I mean, it was pretty crazy. But they made you go out and do some kind of work every day. Like you help them build onto their property or whatever, because they were still adding more beds onto what they could do and take. And just, I don't know, the guy that owned it, he ended up was opened that place 2 years after he got released from being a federal inmate for trafficking cocaine. But he was a good guy. He was a preacher. He drove a pretty crazy program. It was up at daylight and in bed by, I don't know, 9 o'clock. Didn't allow anybody to have cell phones. Wasn't no contact with family but once a week and all that. And we all cooked our own food and cooked everybody else's food. Everybody took a turn every week with that, and I've always been pretty good with living inside of a structured system like jail or rehabs. It's always just been part of my life. I just thought, this is what we do. And graduated there, went back home. Me and my first girlfriend got back together. Moved down to Marion County with her. And I started doing some boxing again. And after a while, it started coming between me and her. We'd split up again. I started doing heroin again. And I started going to jail over and over again, just another continuation of the same old thing. I think I'm 35 at this time, not really spending a lot of time with my kids, haven't really had much of a relationship with them. And at this point, they're getting into middle school and high school, and it's starting to dawn on me that I'm not being a part of their lives. Like I used to be mad at my dad for not being around a lot and not being more of a father to me instead of a boss. I always felt like I was just looked at as his employee, so I didn't want to be that for my kids. And it just started affecting me more and more. And then I went to jail again for a DUI. It was in Boyle County. And my dad had actually tried to get me to come to the Shepherd's house several times over the last probably 5 years. He knew, I think, is it Fred Fox? Was that his name?
Hood.
Fred Hood, yeah. So he had known him through some kind of business dealing somewhere along the line, and he had told him about the Shepherd's house, and my dad had asked me to come try it out several times. So when I got to Boyle County for that DUI, for some reason I ended up not being able to get released, and I had to stay there in jail for a couple of weeks, and I got out, and it wasn't, I don't know, 48 hours later, I was being arrested again for, I can't even remember what, because of the Xanaxes. I just really don't even have any memory of it. So when I got there, I asked the jailer immediately if he could get me back in hold with the guy that asked if I wanted to come to the Shepherd's house. So he did. I filled out all the paperwork that I needed to, went back to the jail cell. I think where he had already talked to me and he knew my father, I guess maybe he had already put something into motion. So I was on the phone with somebody in admissions, I think the next day, and they were asking me all the questions about, prior history of drug addiction and all that and use, and got all that done, and I had a bed letter to come, I think that first of that next month, but they ended up getting me out in like 17 days. So when that came around, I mean, at that point, I was ready to do something different, because all the other programs I had went to was either to get my dad off my back, or do something for court with my kids, or to detox for a little bit so that I wouldn't have to like struggle back through, having a tolerance to everything. And I just was ready to give up with it. I was 37, just hurt everywhere. Had been in a million car wrecks, had broken a bunch of bones, just done beating myself up, trying to have a sturdy life and do something, be a part of my kid's life again. So I got released from jail to the Shepherd's House custody. I can't remember what all the charges were, but I got released to the Shepherd's House custody and still went to court for like the next 16 months. I know there was a DUI in there somewhere, reckless driving. I think there might have been some fleeing and evading in there. But regardless, I got to the Shepherd's House at the MAT program, and just did whatever they asked me to do. It took a little bit of adjustment. I think I came there with like $100 in my pocket that I had left over from when I got arrested. I called my dad, let him know where I was, and he said, well, I think that's great. I hope it works out for you. And basically told me if I needed something, he would listen, but I'm not going to guarantee that he can help. He said it just feels like every time he helps, it just makes the problem worse. So after all these years of going back and forth with him with all this, I understood that. So I just did what I needed to do. I went and got a job, kept that job for a little over a year. Went to all my meetings that they required me to go to, got a sponsor, worked the steps, actually kept the same sponsor throughout the whole program. Actually put effort into working the 12 steps for once, because I'd been introduced to them at almost every program I'd been in, but didn't really, most of them gave you worksheets to do them with, so it was just, answer this question, answer that question, move on to the next one. So got a sponsor that I'd actually known from a previous program that I was in, and he had 8 years sober at this time, and started working through the steps with him and dealing with actual problems that would help me progress in a sober life, and it's worked out great so far. Completed the 12-month program after finishing ILP for 6 weeks, and wasn't sure what I was going to do afterwards, and then asked if there was an opportunity to be a house manager at the house that I lived in.
Why did you want to be a house manager?
I think from all the other programs I had been in, I never really tried to give back or be involved in it. I knew this time around I wanted to stay sober and actually be successful in being there. And from just being around everybody that was in the program, it just looked like the best way to do that was to give back and be more involved in it. So I asked once, and I was given the, I don't know, you just don't know you real well, you're a little squirrely, you run around a lot. It's like, yeah. So I was like, all right. So I continued working at the car wash. I was at the car wash for probably 14 months, I think. Ended up getting a management job there, ran their detail bay and basically all the employees up there. Because I've never had a problem working. It's just sticking to it. So I did. always paid my rent at the house, and I argued those points with the guy that ran the house at Waller, and I think it was one of the other house managers that talked him into finally giving me a chance on a trial basis, and I've been a house manager ever since. So going on a year and a half being one now. 2.5 years sober, about to go on 3. And I have a job with the Shepherd's House now. I watch over one of the 28-day programs houses and the mat and long-term program house.
What is one of your favorite things about Shepherd's House?
I think the consistency with the accountability, actual people that are around that care about seeing people succeed, not letting programs get rained down with just having people there that are there just to fill a bed and not really care about succeeding outside of there or just being there to have somewhere to live. There's no me, there's no any of those other relationships, so I think I just told myself to keep doing it for the right reason, and if somebody wants help, always be there to give it to them if they're genuine about it.
Okay. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
All right, we're done.
All right.